On an ordinary morning in Providence, Rhode Island, a black FBI agent known for his impeccable integrity is detained by local police officers who claim he looked suspicious driving an expensive car through a quiet neighborhood. He shows his federal identification, but the officers refuse to look at it. Within minutes, he's handcuffed in front of neighbors who have known him for years, until the case falls into the hands of Frank, the most humane and respected judge in the city. And when Frank enters the room, one forgotten detail changes everything. Do you think these officers should be punished? Comment below. Marcus Reed adjusted his rearview mirror and smiled. His son's backpack still sat in the passenger seat. Daniel had forgotten it again. 12 years as an FBI agent had taught Marcus to notice details, but his 8-year-old could lose his head if it wasn't attached. He dropped the backpack at school during lunch. The morning sun felt warm through the windstream as he merged onto the main road toward downtown Providence. His black Dodge Charger hummed smoothly beneath him. It was a good car, earned through years of service. That's when he noticed the police cruiser. 2 cars back, maintaining perfect distance. Marcus checked his speed right at the limit. He signaled his next turn. The cruiser followed. Another turn, still there. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Not again. He drove 3 more blocks, hoping he was wrong. The cruiser stayed locked on him like a shadow. Then the lights flashed red and blue. Marcus pulled over immediately, hands visible on the steering wheel. He took a slow breath. Stay calm. Be polite. Survive this. 2 officers approached, one on each side of the vehicle. The driver's side officer tapped on the window with his knuckles. Marcus lowered it slowly, keeping both hands in view. License and registration, the officer said. No greeting, no explanation. Good morning, officer. May I ask why I was stopped? License and registration, now. Marcus reached carefully for his wallet, narrating every movement. I'm reaching for my wallet in my jacket pocket. My registration is in the glove compartment. The officer on the passenger side watched Marcus like he was defusing a bomb. Marcus handed over his driver's license. Officer, I need to inform you that I'm a federal agent with the FBI. My credentials are... Yeah, sure you are. The first officer cut him off. Everybody's got a story. I'm not telling a story. I'm an agent. My badge is in my... Save it. Step out of the vehicle. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? I said step out. Hands where I can see them. Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. If you just look at my credentials. The second officer moved his hand toward his belt. He's getting aggressive, Tom. I'm not aggressive, I'm cooperating. Please just look at my identification. Marcus pulled out his FBI credentials and held them up. The officer glanced at them for half a second and pushed Marcus's hand away. Nice try. You can buy those online for $20. That's a federal badge. You can verify it right now with 1 phone call. Out of the vehicle, last warning. Marcus's heart pounded. He knew how this worked. 1 wrong move, 1 misinterpreted gesture, and he'd become another statistic. He opened the door slowly and stepped out, hands raised. Neighbors were starting to appear on porches. Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down. The Johnsons across the street. People who waved to him every morning. Turn around, hands behind your back. Officer, please. Check my credentials. Call the FBI field office. I work there. My name is Marcus Reed. This car doesn't match someone like you, the first officer muttered, snapping handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. Marcus felt the metal bite into his skin. Someone like me? What does that mean? You match the description of a suspect. What suspect? What description? We'll sort it out at the station, Mrs. Chen called out from her porch. That's Agent Reed. He lives 4 houses down. What are you doing? The officers ignored her. They guided Marcus toward the patrol car, and he saw more neighbors gathering. The Johnsons' teenage daughter had her phone out recording. Marcus hoped she kept recording. At the station, the booking process felt surreal. They tried to process him for disorderly conduct, though Marcus hadn't raised his voice once. He sat in a holding area, still handcuffed, while officers filed paperwork. A sergeant walked past, glanced at Marcus, then stopped. He backtracked and stared. "Why is there a man in an FBI jacket sitting in my holding area?" The arresting officers looked up from their desks. "He claims he's FBI. We think it's fake." The sergeant walked closer. "Did you verify the credentials?" "We didn't need to. He matched a description." "What description? What call?" Silence. The sergeant's jaw tightened. "Get him uncuffed, now, and bring me every piece of paperwork on this arrest." Within an hour, Marcus sat in a room with 3 sergeants, 2 internal affairs officers, and a lieutenant who looked like he wanted to disappear. They apologized. They explained that the case would be reviewed. They asked if Marcus needed medical attention. What Marcus needed was justice. "This is going to Judge Caprio," the lieutenant finally said. "He handles cases like this. He'll want to hear everything." Marcus had heard of Frank Caprio. Everyone in Providence had. The judge was famous for his fairness, his compassion, and his refusal to tolerate injustice. Good. Marcus wanted someone who would actually listen. The courtroom felt smaller than Marcus expected. He'd testified in federal court dozens of times, but sitting on the other side, as the victim, made everything different. The wooden benches, the state seal on the wall, the quiet murmur of people waiting for justice. Frank Caprio entered through the side door, and the room shifted. Everyone stood. The bailiff didn't need to call for order. Respect for this judge was automatic. Frank was older than Marcus remembered, his hair completely white now, but his eyes still held that sharp clarity. He settled into his chair and surveyed the room with the calm authority of someone who'd seen every kind of human behavior. "Please, everyone sit," Frank said gently. His voice carried warmth even in formality. Marcus sat. The 2 officers who'd arrested him sat on the opposite side, their postures rigid. The sergeant who'd intervened stood near the back, arms crossed. Frank reviewed the papers in front of him, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The silence stretched. Finally, he looked up. "Agent Reed, I understand you had a difficult morning." "Yes, Your Honor." "And officers?" Frank glanced at the report. "Daniels and Kowalski, you arrested Agent Reed. Tell me why." Officer Daniels stood. "Your Honor, the suspect, Mr. Reed, was driving a vehicle that didn't match the neighborhood. We conducted a routine traffic stop." "What violation prompted the stop?" Daniels hesitated. "He matched the description of a suspect." "What suspect?" "A suspect in the area." Frank removed his glasses. "Officer Daniels, I've been on this bench for over 30 years. A suspect in the area is not probable cause. What specific call were you responding to?" Silence. Frank's gaze moved to Kowalski. "Officer, we thought he looked suspicious, Your Honor." "Suspicious how?" "The vehicle was expensive. The neighborhood is quiet. It didn't fit." Marcus felt his jaw clench. There it was. The real reason, laid bare. Frank set down his pen. He leaned back in his chair and something in his expression changed. Not anger exactly, but deep disappointment. "Gentlemen, do you know why I became a judge?" The officers shook their heads. "My father came to this country with nothing. He spoke broken English, worked 3 jobs, and saved every penny to give his children opportunities. One day he was stopped by police while walking home from work. They accused him of stealing his own coat because it looked too nice for someone like him." Marcus watched Frank's face. The judge wasn't reading from notes or reciting a rehearsed speech. This was memory, raw and personal. "My father spent 6 hours in custody before the store owner confirmed he'd bought the coat legitimately. 6 hours for the crime of looking successful while immigrant. I was 12 years old. I waited outside the station, terrified they'd take him away forever." Frank put his glasses back on. "That day taught me what injustice feels like. And I swore that if I ever had the power to stop it, I would. The courtroom was completely silent. Frank turned to Marcus. Agent Reed, I apologize on behalf of this city. What happened to you should never happen to anyone. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Frank's voice hardened. Officers, I'm ordering the immediate release of all body camera footage from this incident. Officer Daniels shifted. Your Honor, there's a problem with that. What problem? The cameras weren't activated during the stop. The courtroom erupted. Frank banged his gavel once, and silence returned instantly. Weren't activated, Frank repeated slowly. You stopped a citizen, removed him from his vehicle, handcuffed him in public, and transported him to booking without recording any of it. It was an oversight, Your Honor. An oversight! Frank wrote something down, his pen scratching hard against paper. Sergeant Mitchell, I want a full internal investigation. I want every radio call checked, and I want to know if there was ever a suspect matching Agent Reed's description. Yes, Your Honor. Frank looked at Marcus again. Agent Reed, this case is far from over, but I promise you, the truth will come out. Marcus nodded. For the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, he felt like someone actually saw him. The investigation moved quickly, too quickly for Officers Daniels and Kowalski's comfort. Within 48 hours, Sergeant Mitchell returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom with a thick folder. Marcus sat in the same seat, his FBI supervisor beside him now. The officers had brought their union representative, a sharp-eyed woman in a gray suit who looked ready for battle. Frank reviewed the investigation summary in silence. His expression gave nothing away. Sergeant Mitchell, what did you find? The sergeant stood. Your Honor, we pulled dispatch records for the entire morning of the incident. There were no calls reporting suspicious activity in that neighborhood, no descriptions matching Agent Reed, no complaints about vehicles or persons of any kind. Officer Daniels shot to his feet. That's not accurate, Your Honor. We received information through informal channels. Informal channels? Frank's eyebrows rose. Another officer mentioned seeing suspicious activity the day before. We were following up. Which officer? Daniels hesitated. I don't recall his name. You don't recall, Frank made a note. Officer Kowalski. Do you remember this other officer's name? Kowalski glanced at his partner. No, Your Honor. The union representative leaned forward. Your Honor, if I may, my clients were acting in good faith based on information they believed to be credible. They made a judgment call in the interest of public safety. Frank set down his pen. Ms. Chen, I appreciate your advocacy for your clients, but good faith requires some actual foundation. An unnamed officer allegedly saw something allegedly suspicious the day before. That's not police work, that's guesswork. With respect, Your Honor, officers must make split-second decisions. This wasn't split-second. Agent Reed was followed for several blocks. He was cooperative. He presented federal credentials. Your clients had multiple opportunities to verify his identity and chose not to. Marcus watched the officers. Daniel's jaw was tight. Kowalski stared at the table. They knew the walls were closing in. The union representative shifted tactics. Your Honor, my clients have exemplary service records. Officer Daniels has 12 years on the force. Officer Kowalski has 8. Neither has any complaints of racial bias. Until now, Frank said quietly. Your Honor, this is one incident, one misunderstanding. Surely that doesn't warrant destroying 2 careers. Marcus felt his stomach turn. This was how it always went. The focus shifted from what happened to what punishment would cost. As if his humiliation, his trauma, his son asking why Daddy was arrested, as if all of that mattered less than 2 careers built on authority they'd abused. Frank seemed to read Marcus's thoughts. He looked directly at the FBI agent. Agent Reed, do you have anything you'd like to say? Marcus stood slowly. He'd rehearsed this moment in his head a dozen times, but now that it was here, the words felt heavy. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I don't want these officers' families to suffer, but I do want justice. I want them to understand what they did. I was handcuffed in front of my neighbors. People I've lived next to for 5 years watched me get arrested like a criminal. My son saw the video. He asked me if I did something wrong. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. I've spent 12 years serving my country. I've put my life on the line, and none of it mattered because I was driving while black in a nice car. The courtroom was silent. Frank nodded slowly. Thank you, Agent Reed. He turned back to the officers. Gentlemen, I'm referring this case to the state police for a full civil rights investigation. But before we adjourn, there's one more piece of evidence that needs to be addressed. The sergeant handed Frank another document. Frank read it, and his expression darkened. Officers, did either of you check the vehicle registration during your stop? We intended to, Your Honor, but yes or no? No, Your Honor. Frank held up the paper. Then you missed something critical. Frank held the vehicle registration up so everyone in the courtroom could see it. The paper trembled slightly in his hand, not from weakness, but from barely controlled frustration. This is the complete vehicle registration for the Dodge Charger driven by Agent Reed. Would you like to know what it says? Officer Daniels swallowed hard. Your Honor, it says this vehicle is registered to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Providence Field Office, Fleet Vehicle Number 847, assigned to Special Agent Marcus Anthony Reed, badge number 3471. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, a few angry shouts from the gallery. Frank banged his gavel twice. This information, Frank continued, his voice rising above the noise, is available through any standard DMV check. It takes approximately 30 seconds to access. 30 seconds that would have prevented this entire travesty. The union representative stood quickly. Your Honor, in the heat of the moment, there was no heat. There was no moment. This was a traffic stop on a quiet residential street on a sunny morning. Agent Reed cooperated fully. He remained calm. He identified himself repeatedly. Your clients had every opportunity to verify the simple, basic facts before humiliating a federal agent in front of his community. Marcus felt vindicated and exhausted all at once. This was what he'd needed, someone with authority calling it what it was. Officer Kowalski finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We made a mistake, Your Honor. A mistake? Frank removed his glasses. A mistake is adding numbers wrong. A mistake is taking the wrong exit. What you did was ignore evidence, dismiss credentials, and arrest a man based on assumptions you won't even admit out loud. Your Honor, please, Daniels tried. The vehicle had government plates. Did you notice that? Silence. The registration would have shown federal ownership immediately. Did you check it? No, Your Honor. Why not? More silence. The answer hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone in the room. Frank looked at Marcus. Agent Reed, this vehicle is clearly marked as government property, correct? Yes, Your Honor. It has exempt plates and federal identifiers. And yet these officers saw an expensive car, saw you driving it, and decided you must have stolen it or didn't belong in it. Is that a fair assessment? Marcus chose his words carefully. I believe they made assumptions, Your Honor, incorrect assumptions. Incorrect and illegal assumptions. Frank turned back to the officers. Gentlemen, I'm declaring this arrest completely unlawful. Agent Reed was detained without probable cause, without legal justification, and without basic due diligence. This is precisely the kind of policing that destroys community trust and violates civil rights. The union representative made one last attempt. Your Honor, my clients are willing to issue a formal apology. An apology? Frank's voice cut like steel. An apology doesn't undo the trauma. It doesn't erase the humiliation. It doesn't answer Agent Reed's son when he asks why Daddy was in handcuffs. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. Someone understood. Someone finally understood. Frank continued, "I'm ordering the following. First, all charges against Agent Reed are dismissed with prejudice. Second, this incident will be forwarded to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division for federal review. Third, Officers Daniels and Kowalski are suspended pending the outcome of multiple investigations. And fourth," he paused, looking directly at Marcus, "Agent Reed, on behalf of this court and this city, I apologize. You were failed by the very people sworn to protect you. You deserved better. You deserve better." Marcus stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. That means everything." Frank nodded. "You should never have been treated this way. No one should." He banged his gavel. "This court is adjourned." As people filed out, several approached Marcus to shake his hand. Mrs. Chen hugged him. The Johnson's daughter showed him her video, already viewed 50,000 times online. The officers left through a side door, heads down, careers in ruins. Justice, Marcus thought, didn't always feel as satisfying as it should, but it still mattered. Marcus stood outside the Providence courthouse, watching the afternoon sun paint the building's columns gold. His son Daniel held his hand, backpack secure this time, looking up at the tall doors with wide eyes. "This is where the judge helped you, Dad?" "Yes, buddy. This is where Judge Caprio made sure the truth came out." Daniel squeezed his father's hand. "Can we say thank you?" Marcus smiled. "That's exactly why we're here." They walked inside together. The clerk recognized Marcus immediately and waved them through. Judge Caprio's chambers were on the third floor, modest, lined with law books and family photographs. Frank looked up from his desk when they entered, and his stern courtroom expression melted into a warm smile. "Agent Reed, and this must be Daniel." Daniel stepped forward, surprisingly confident. "Thank you for helping my dad, sir." Frank came around the desk and knelt to Daniel's level. "Your dad didn't need much help, young man. He handled himself with incredible dignity. You should be very proud of him." "I am." Frank stood and shook Marcus's hand. "How are you holding up?" "Better. The nightmares are getting less frequent. My supervisor assigned me to train new agents on civil rights protocols, turning the experience into something useful. That's wonderful. And the officers resigned before they could be fired. The federal investigation concluded they violated my civil rights. The city settled, though I donated most of it to organizations fighting police misconduct." Frank nodded approvingly. "You're a remarkable man, Marcus. I'm just trying to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else, someone who might not have federal credentials, someone who might not survive the encounter." The weight of those words settled between them. Both men understood the grim statistics, the names that became hashtags, the families left grieving. Frank gestured to the chairs. "Sit, please, both of you." They sat. Daniel swung his legs, looking at the certificates on the wall. "Marcus, I've been thinking about your case, about all the cases like yours. People ask me why I care so much, why I get emotional on the bench. You want to know the truth? Please. Because I remember being powerless. I remember watching my father humiliated for the crime of succeeding despite the odds. And I learned something important that day. Systems don't change themselves. People change them. People who refuse to look away when injustice happens." Marcus leaned forward. "You didn't look away. Neither did you. You could have stayed quiet, taken the settlement, moved on. Instead, you're training the next generation to do better. That takes courage." Daniel tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, you're brave." Marcus's eyes misted. "I'm trying to be, buddy." Frank reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small pin, the Rhode Island state seal. He handed it to Daniel. "This is for you, young man, to remember that justice matters, that speaking up matters, that your father stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Daniel took the pin carefully, like it was made of glass. "Thank you, Judge Caprio." They stood to leave. At the door, Marcus turned back. "Your Honor, that story about your father, the coat, did things ever get better for him?" Frank smiled, but sadness lingered in his eyes. "He never stopped being stopped, Marcus, but he never stopped believing that things could change. And because he believed it, I believed it. And now I try to make it true, one case at a time." Marcus understood. Change was slow. Justice was incomplete. But people like Frank, people who used their power to protect instead of punish, they mattered. Outside, Daniel pinned the seal to his backpack, right next to his school patches. "Dad?" "Yeah? When I grow up, I want to make things fair, like Judge Caprio." Marcus hugged his son. "Then you will, buddy, then you will. What would you do if this happened to you or someone you love? Comment below.